Hello, David McMillan here with what will be installment one of a series I'll call Open the Pod Bay Doors, Hal. Yes, it's the famous line from 2001, A Space Odyssey, in which Dave Bowman, who is the last survivor of the Odyssey, trying to get some cooperation from the HAL 9000 onboard computer, which is running everything, and certainly run right through the crew, leaving only Dave alive. Well, he hopes not for alive for very long, because Dave's stuck outside of the ship and he needs Hal to let him back in his pod. This set of Open the Pod Bay Doors, Hal, will be focused on not just mankind, humanity, and machines, and our struggle with them, but really the stuff around us. And let's take that in the most broad context of stuff. You remember the comedian George Carlin? He did a great spin on the fact that we have so many things, we spend our lives making a place for them, that houses were just a covering for our stuff. The difficulties of travelling around when you've got to take a subset, a reduced package of your stuff, and then take it to wherever you're going, a hotel or a friend's house, which is the worst of the options, according to George. Well, listen, I'll put a link in the thing rather than talk you through what is somebody a lot more amusing than me. Here's a little bit of it.
And I couldn't find any place to put my stuff. And I don't know how you are, but I need a place to put my stuff. So that's what I've been doing back there, just trying to find a place for my stuff. You know how important that is. That's the whole meaning of life, isn't it? Trying to find a place for your stuff. That's all your house is. Your house is just a place for your stuff. If you didn't have so much goddamn stuff, you wouldn't need a house. You could just walk around all the time. That's all your house is. It's a pile of stuff with a cover on it. You see that when you take off in an airplane and you look down and you see everybody's got a little pile of stuff. Everybody's got their own pile of stuff. And when you leave your stuff, you got to lock it up. Wouldn't want somebody to come by and take some of your stuff. They always take the good stuff. They don't bother with that crap you're saving. Ain't nobody interested in your fourth grade arithmetic papers. They're looking for the good stuff. That's all your house is. It's a place to keep your stuff while you go out and get more stuff. Now, sometimes you've got to move. You got to get a bigger house. Why? Too much stuff. You've got to move all your stuff. And maybe put some of your stuff in storage. Now imagine that. There's a whole industry based on keeping an eye on your stuff. Enough about your stuff. Let's talk about other people's stuff. Did you ever notice when you go to somebody else's house, you never quite feel 100% at home? You know why? No room for your stuff. Somebody else's stuff is all over the place. And what awful stuff it is.
I don't suppose I need to run you through the history of the obsession with stuff. Certainly, the stuff that we had as hunter-gatherers was probably pretty limited. A few tools, some kind of handbag. I'll call it that. If you look at the old rock art, the paintings and the sculpture, the older stuff all seems to have some kind of mystery Gucci bag on there. Well, it's certainly got a handle and it's kind of square. My guess is it didn't have any massive significance other than the massive significance that our carrying devices have today. I'll see if I can scare up a picture of one. But anyway, as hunter-gatherers, we'd lug that sort of thing around. I often like to think that it was perhaps the carrier of the coals, the thing that once a fire was started, you certainly wouldn't want to move around and have to go through the whole load of crap to start a fire from zero. Tinder, friction, some kind of sparking rock, and they're not so easy to find in nature. If I ever get around to writing the Catastrophe Companion, it's really half written, which is a kind of survival handbook for the day when just about everything worth having, all the stuff, is just about wiped out. It will certainly give you a guide as to where to get a flintstone. Did Fred have one? No. Yes, stuff. And all the rich people, the kings, had all the best stuff. And they must have shared what we have today. We like the finest things. Is it all the best tool, the best knife, the Damascus steel, the Worcester, whatever it's called? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. No, it doesn't really matter what it is, but the fine things are worth having. Now, what is it? In any place, even my humble abode, there's so much stuff. I dragged out one box, perhaps two, from the herbs and spices. Only the ones that were in little jars. The frozen collection, the ones that came in kind of plain brown wrappers. No, just the bottled ones. And take a look at this. Of course, much of that spice buying was down to my dear Jeanette, who is quite a good cook. Well, a very good cook, I have to say. And most of those things were for particular recipes, if that's not the scam of all time, getting you to buy saffron, for crying out loud. Have you ever tried to taste something out of saffron? It's just a colour. And it was a colour before colours were easy to get, before modern dyes. Well, if you wanted to have red, you had cochineal, wasn't it? Or something else bug-like and squashed. And I think purple came from a tiny snail that the Phoenicians managed to get a hold of. Anyway, it was Mediterranean, and that cost plenty, more than gold. But many things in the old world were worth more than gold, certainly silk. But the spices are really what, again, our attempt to have power over what comes to us, over our food, that we control it. Sure, we control it with heat and cold and knives, of course, softening hammers. But the taste of it, which is to say, it's not the taste, it's the aroma. After all, taste, what are there, 5 tastes? Sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and what is it called? Umau? Umamau? Anyway, whatever it is, it's supposed to be a kind of... Look, if you can tell me what that extra true taste is, I'd be astonished. But it is the aroma. And most of these spices, well, that's all they are, just an unusual scent. Not my kind of obsessive collection of stuff, though. Mine's different. The stuff that I have the greatest interest in are tools. Why? Because there seems, and perhaps it's an illusion, that there's more control over it. There's gripping ones that cut, ones grind, scrape. And I'm kind of driven to cover every possibility. If I see something at Screwfix or Tool Station or wherever, and I don't really have a purpose for it, I'll engineer my supposed day job working life around to where I need it. Take a look at some of these, and this is really just the tip of the iceberg. Just the sun was setting, I had to throw them out on the table at the back. Take a look. I didn't even begin to bring out the adapters, but the tools for cutting into things are kind of irresistible, but that's not that. It strips wires, and things measure, and grip, and get into places you can't get, and wrench things apart. And, well, persuaders of various kinds. Tiny holes. And things to be lost. That's quite solid. Some things are crap. Some things made well. Know the difference. getting the right tip in. God, you can never have too many. It's only rusty there, but they get in there. Clips, gotta have them. And when you want to snip, you need to know how. And to grip. And to get into the tiny things. Yeah, right up into it. But you've got to have the lot. Everything. Every conceivable size. And big enough, another kind of persuader, and definitely small enough. But never forget the simple ones you gotta have, or the exact ones, without which, no connection. But this is nothing new for me, this obsessive drive. In fact, you could say that I was drawn to crime because I needed the money to buy stuff. I don't mean just the narcotics, I certainly wanted that. But having traded that up, as it were, to some middle ground, the cash, I obsessively bought cameras, huge things, had them made. I've gone on about. I took an aerial photography camera, huge thing it was, 4x5-inch format. Now, normally took in slide-in plates, but that wasn't good enough, of course, so I needed roll film for that. It had to be specially, well, they made it, but you had to have it coated in the particular emulsion and the film you wanted by Kodak. So that came in 33-foot rolls, and you can imagine it's a little bit floppy and you can't hold it too tightly. So a vacuum back had to be built onto the back of this camera. It was extraordinary. I wanted to be able to carry it around like a photojournalist. Built the thing at a cost of about £50,000. Back in those days, that was something. That was probably, I don't know, $300,000 today. What happened to it? It was trashed. Yes. Taken by the police. You know, they particularly don't like you if you make money in whatever it is that's against the law. You might be a bookmaker. You might be, I don't know, dodging some tax on some goods or running something on eBay. But as soon as you cross the line, if you're at all successful at that, you'll get smashed by the authorities. They want your stuff. They'll take it. They'll play with it. Mostly, they want to wreck it. It's depressing. One of the most depressing experiences I had, apart from losing people, that's quite in a different category of stuff, I suppose. But back when I was 24, and they came, the police, on some pretext they moved into my house, saying they were hunting for clues. They lived there for 3 weeks. Remember, this was a special team, a task force, so they were all pals, a lot of them. Anyway, some of them moved in there and really wrecked the place. They didn't like my taste in art, took the paintings off and burnt them in the fireplace. They substituted shit for chlorine in the pool. I don't know whether that was a parting gesture. I hope for the sake of cleanliness that it was. But here's one that really got to me. I had this thing made, okay? It was large. It wasn't life-size, but it was a gearbox, 5-speed. But a model of one, skeletal. You turned a handle and moved the gear stick, and you could see how all the gears inside were moving. Yeah, so what, you say? Well, it was made of wood. Interesting. Not just any wood. It was made from the last commercially sold stand of Tasmanian Huon pine. Now, I don't know if you've ever come across that wood. Unlikely that you could have. Maybe. But it is smooth. It is dense. It is actually quite lightweight. And to make all these tiny parts for this gearbox, the largest wheel must have had, I don't know, I'm guessing about 900 teeth in it. And every one of those was carved out of pieces smaller than a quarter matchstick. It was a work of art. It cost 5 Gs at the time. And do you know where that went? I'd like to say it was stolen by a better class of policemen. Sadly, it ended up in the fire too. That kind of destruction is not good. You know, I always say that we've lost nothing unless we lose the data, the story, the information. If that's preserved, then really we haven't lost anything. But we have my stuff. So where does this lament and explanation of the obsessive buying of things and collecting and hoarding and specializing in stuff, machinery in my case, and others might have, I don't know, hair products, face products, makeup, dresses. And there's the things that women like as well. Anyway, lots of things. But how does that tie in with Hal refusing to open the pod bay door? He's a machine. It kind of does link up, and it'll take a while to get there. But you're not going anywhere, you've got plenty of time. Before closing off this first edition, let's just define what really the desired stuff is. It is the noble metal, the gold, the platinum. No, it's the thing made into a shape, the perfect wallet. I once heard some kind of leather described in a wallet as, it would have been limp as silk, this leather, were not the wallet chock full of thousands. Yes, that was a Terry Southern phrase, that one. Stayed with me. Yeah, ruined me. No, in the manufacture of things, in the carving of stone, which I guess is the first very good working of stuff that civilization had, we were admiring our control over solid things, turning a rock not just into a rough axe head, but smoothing it down into a 3D portrait of somebody we know, or just as well, somebody we imagine. Now, we still have control there, and our machines are supposedly at our control too. Now, the big fear is, of course, that they're not, but that's not quite so. That's for later. But let's define stuff properly. As you know, all stuff is made out of matter, and matter comes in, well, 90-odd and more forms that kind of stay in your hand or don't irradiate you to death or poison you of some kind. And even amongst those things, once you eliminate the gases and the liquids, you have the noble metals, the stuff that's undeniably there. Or is it? In fact, as it turns out, matter itself is only an emergent property of certain other characteristics of fields. It's so hard to sink your teeth into, but it's true. Emergent properties, like hydrogen, oxygen, water. Yeah. But water in three forms: ice as a vapor, and the liquid kind. In such a narrow band too, only between 0 and 100 degrees Celsius, without which that tiny narrow band, we wouldn't be here, biological life. And that's just stuff too. Just in the way that a piece of iron is shaped to become a key that turns a lock. A piece of biological matter, carbon-based life, becomes a kind of key which is not even alive, but shaped right. It's a virus. It has enough working clock-like parts to attach itself into the mechanics of our cells. No, they're definitely not alive, a virus. Okay, you can keep the argument going and saying that the cell's just an automaton too. But we do have certain emergent properties as a result. I'll class having a creature that has motion and can have velocity, runs about, is an emergent property of the biological form. Anyway, let's not get lost in all of that. You can roll up a couple of numbers and replay that one if it means anything to you. But everything is just shaped material, shaped matter. And why do we drive ourselves to possess it so much and then transform it and make little gizmos out of it? I was a fan of those too. I can't tell you how much I craved tiny transistor radios when I was about 7, 8, 9. They seemed so extraordinary. There was a thing before all those, for poor kids. It was called a crystal set. It used to take AM radio, which is a very strong signal. Used to irradiate. The AM radio vibrates and creates a bit of energy in just about any lump of metal that it strikes, including bed frames and window frames. So you could get an alligator clip with a wire on it and attach it to a bed frame. And then all you had to do was tune it to get your AM radio. And the tuner was such a simple circuit, a diode and a coil. And you ran that onto an earpiece, really. It wouldn't run a speaker. There was no amplification. But the wonder of that simplicity and the wonder of the complication of the transistor, I was in love with all the gizzards of the electronic world from a very early age. I craved that. I wanted machines that I had absolutely no purpose for. There was one, someplace I was working, I don't know, trainee wombat, I was at some big tape house in the 70s. The way of recording video was not digital exactly in those days. It was kind of analog, but the signal was so fast. The TV picture was scanned in lines, and it was going very quickly. You can imagine you've got, depending on your system, between 400 and 600 lines, 20 to 30 times a second. And every one of those has a little wave that you have to record. Your bit of tape would have to move very, very fast. Now, I'm telling you about that because the tape machines to record those damn things were massive. Ampex made one. It was a quad helical scan. What? Yeah, it ran 2-inch tape at about 15 or 30 inches a second, quite fast. But that wasn't fast enough for the frequencies it needed. So the tape head, the recording head, had to be set on an angle and spinning so that the tape moved past, and it spun. You can imagine the wave pattern that it formed on the tape. You couldn't see it. Well, you could see the results as the tape wore away. But they were expensive and extraordinary machines, and I was in love with them, and I had to have them, and I got them. But at some cost. But why? Bearing in mind that stuff is just matter that is carved and shaped. In fact, everything does its thing because of its shape. Even the tiny bits of ourselves do their things because of their shape. They move, they react, they take on their chemistry because of their shape, in a sense. In a very direct sense. There's no playing about. But tell me of your obsessions, your desire to acquire things. Now, there's an alternative to that. Does it hold? Yeah. Reject, cast aside all material things. Well, yeah, you want to eat. Some go even further. Say you don't have any interest in them, but you do. But you do. It doesn't really work putting aside matter, the desire to have stuff. Just for the hoarding, that's a sickness, but the love of it. Tell me of yours and how it fits into your sense of controlling your world, or perhaps barricading against the world you don't want. Yeah. And soon enough, we're going to ask Hal to open those damn pod bay doors. I'll see you next in this series, if you've stuck it this long, and I doubt you have. I should really make these things at 10 minutes. And a couple of right plunkers have told me I go on for too long. It only makes me go on longer. It probably doesn't matter. You don't watch them. Background's crap. Might be nighttime material for going to sleep. Anyway, back soon with more about stuff. Should have really just run the George Carlin thing, shouldn't I? Yeah.
You can't bring all your stuff. Just the stuff you really like. The stuff that fits you well that month. Let's say you're going to go to Honolulu. You're going to go all the way to Honolulu. You got to take 2 big bags of stuff. Plus your carry-on stuff, plus the stuff in your pockets. You get all the way to Honolulu and you get in your hotel room and you start to put away your stuff. That's the first thing you do in a hotel room is put away your stuff. I'll put some stuff in here, put some stuff down there. Here's another